Hello and welcome to the Inns of Court Armoured Car Regiment channel. Today we'll be covering the events of May the 4th to May the 11th of 1945. May the 4th, B, C and D squadrons remained in reserve, with B Squadron at Medzen, C Squadron at Geschendorf and D Squadron at Riekling. A Squadron sent a patrol towards Neumünster and another to the Ziegerberger Forest, but at 0800 hours an order was issued for patrols to hold their current position, and later they were recalled back to the rest of A Squadron at Fahrenkirch. The reason for the recall was due to negotiations between the two sides for the surrender of the German forces, for which both sides had agreed a neutral zone was to be maintained between the two forces. The Allied northern limit was a line from Bad Bramstedt to Neustadt. However, some elements of the Inns of Court, especially D Squadron, were already north of this line. These elements were allowed to stay in position as long as movement was kept to a minimum. In the evening, a squadron's leader conference was held and the regiment was informed that the regimental area of occupation was going to be the Sudetenland district on the Danish frontier. It was also on this day the Inns of Court suffered its last loss during hostilities, this being 2nd Lieutenant D.L. Sewell from D Squadron, who was killed in a tragic accident with his Vickers K machine gun. He was only 19 years old and had joined the regiment in November 1944. May the 5th to the 6th. At 0800 hours on the 5th of May, the German army in northwest Europe surrendered to the 21st Army Group. However, the German High Command needed time in order to pass the message out to its scattered units in the area, and therefore a standstill order was still in force in order to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Therefore, rather than the Inns of Court heading off into its area of occupation, it instead found itself either resting or maintaining traffic posts to prevent any Allied movement north of the stop line for these 2 days. May the 7th. At 0141 hours, the Germans surrendered on all fronts unconditionally. At 0900 hours, the regiment headquarters hoisted the Union flag over Scharkendorf. However, for most of the day, the Inns of Court maintained their traffic posts to prevent any Allied movement north of the stop line. In the evening, the Inns of Court were briefed on their task for the following day. At first light, they were to proceed to the Kiel Canal in order to prevent a large force of German troops from heading south across the canal, which they were attempting to do in accordance with the erroneous instructions being broadcast from Hamburg. May the 8th, VE Day. The Inns of Court headed out at 0415 hours for the Kiel Canal. Upon reaching the canal, they took control of all crossings over the eastern half of the canal, from Rendsburg to the eastern coast. B Squadron were on the extreme right, D Squadron to their west, then A Squadron and finally C Squadron in the southwest. When C Squadron arrived at their crossings, they found units of the 7th Armoured Division already in possession, so all patrols were withdrawn and the squadron harboured at Lutenwistedt. A and B Squadron had little to report and had an uneventful day. D Squadron had the misfortune of being responsible for the swing railway bridges at Rendsburg. Although there were no incidents to mention, there was a considerable amount of traffic in both directions over the bridges. Interpreters were kept working at top speed in order to work out whom was entitled to cross from the hordes who were endeavouring to go south. A Squadron harboured at Jevenstedt, B Squadron at Bovenau and D Squadron at Rendsburg. May the 9th. The Inns of Court remained upon their half of the Kiel Canal. Advance parties carried out a reconnaissance of the Sudetenland district. In the evening, the regiment made preparations to move out to their occupation area. May the 10th. The regiment was ready at 0530 hours, and the whole regiment travelled in column over the Kiel Canal at 0700 hours. The regiment reached their occupation area and billets by 1100 hours. The regiment headquarters and D Squadron established themselves at Niebel, A Squadron at Lech, B Squadron at Zuiderlugum, and C Squadron at Miedabel. The rest of the day was spent in turning out German troops, women and civilians from billets intended for regiment use, and in getting settled down. May the 11th. The regiment started to carry out its occupational role. This was A. To patrol the Kaiser Zuidtonden, less the islands. B. To control the passage of German troops as they moved from Denmark to the surrender area. C. To ascertain location and numbers of German troops in the Kais. D. To ascertain location and number of displaced persons and prisoners of war executive in the Kais. Prisoners of war executive were prisoners of war whom were not German or Italian and could be used to assist in the occupational duties, especially if they spoke English. E. To ascertain location and amount of enemy war material in the Kais. F. To prevent unauthorized crossing of the frontier. General instructions were given by patrols to Burgomeisters as to the behaviour required from them, and the restrictions imposed upon civilians. The regiment area was divided into 4 squadron areas, and the squadrons were responsible to regiment headquarters for maintaining order in and searching their areas. The regiment would be posted to Germany until March 1947. Losses over these last few days of hostilities was 1 killed due to a fatal accident. 2 more members of the Inns of Court would be killed during the peacetime that soon followed, these being Corporal J. Putnam, whom died on the 14th of June 1945, and Corporal J. W. Barnes, whom died on the 23rd of June 1945. The Inns of Court had spent a majority of their time working with the 11th Armoured Division, which was commanded by Major General Pip Roberts. In March 1947, Major General Roberts provided the following recollection of the regiment for the foreword to Needs Must. The Inns of Court Regiment were only under my command for the last 9 months of the war, but these last months were probably the most momentous in the war years as far as this regiment was concerned. I came to the 11th Armoured Division, which I was commanding, at a time when neither the type of country nor the type of fighting were well suited to their employment. Nevertheless, there were some tasks which had to be given to them, and these were carried out with a dash and determination of the highest order. I was delighted to welcome the regiment into the division, as I saw that when the time came for them to be employed in a suitable role, they would pay a high dividend. In this I was not mistaken, and the standard of their work was comparable to armoured car regiments with far greater operational experience. I am grateful for this opportunity of expressing my appreciation to the Inns of Court Regiment for the fine part that they played in the successful operations of the 11th Armoured Division. Over the course of hostilities, from the 6th of June 1944 to the 8th of May 1945, 63 officers and other ranks of the Inns of Court Regiment had lost their lives. A roll of honour will soon follow this video. On their 1,200-mile journey from the Normandy beaches to the Kiel Canal, the Inns of Court had lost at least 30 Daimler Dingo scout cars, 10 Daimler armoured cars including a sawn-off, and 4 M5 half-tracks. The number of lost vehicles is likely greater, with the numbers presented based upon my personal bookkeeping from the accounts of actions in the Inns of Court's War Diary. And with that, we draw a close on the Inns of Court's War Diary during the period of hostilities.